drexel.edu/ambition can't wait.
This is WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820, NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by X-Chair Office Chair, dynamic variable lumbar support, and 10 ergonomic features for maximum support and comfort at xchair.com or 8444-X-Chair.
At the risk of oversimplifying, but not by too terribly much, virus goes up, the markets go down. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Parametric. With taxes a growing consideration, Parametric can help financial advisors create passive portfolios customized for tax efficiency. More at customtothecore.com. And by Databricks, simplifying data and AI. Thousands of data teams use Databricks cloud data platform to innovate faster. Learn more at databricks.com. And by Indigo Ag, believing that investing in agriculture as a nature-based climate solution is an investment in the health of people and planet. IndigoAg.com/carbon support.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Rizdal. It is Wednesday, today, the 28th of October. Good as always to have you along, everybody. Yeah, things up. It's pretty simple. Virus cases are way, way higher in way more places. There is no relief package coming, probably February at the earliest, if at all, if everybody is honest with themselves. And that's it. That all spills over into the real economy, which the stock market is not, thank you very much, but which it does reflect. And so you get a cratering day on Wall Street today. All three major indices off 3.5%. All sectors got clobbered, including, with good reason, commercial aviation. We mentioned that because Boeing reported a quarterly loss of $466 million this morning. Planes just aren't selling right now. The company also said it's going to lay off another 7,000 people. So Marketplace's Andy Euler gets us going with a story about a company that is a big factor in that real economy I was talking about.
Boeing said today it expects to end next year with around 130,000 employees. It started 2020 with a workforce of 160,000. Richard Abulafia is an aviation analyst at Teal Group.
Historically, Boeing has been the world's single biggest plane maker and the biggest single exporting manufacturer in the U.S. So it really is a needle mover in terms of the broader economy.
And sort of like GE, Boeing has worked to diversify.
Boeing has a lot of commercial, military, defense, software, and engineering programs. It's not just building the big 747 jets of old.
That's Arthur Wheaton at Cornell University.
It's a pretty big corporation and has a huge impact on supply chains.
He says there's a vast array of subcontractors in the U.S. and worldwide that produce for and with Boeing. So when demand for Boeing products declines, it's felt by many of Boeing's 17,000 suppliers, like those who make jet engines and parts for wings.
Keep in mind, these are not just people that are turning wrenches.
Michael Boyd is an aviation industry consultant in Evergreen, Colorado.
So it's not like just getting rid of a couple mechanics. You're getting rid of some highly trained people that you're going to have to get back eventually.
When people eventually return to flying. But Richard Abulafia at Teal Group says his fear is that manufacturing will soon start feeling the pain of the pandemic like retail and hospitality already have.
And I think, unfortunately, we're bound to see additional production cuts and job losses in the commercial aerospace industry, along with other similar losses in other parts of the economy.
Because as the biggest companies go, so goes the American economy. I'm Andy Euler for Marketplace.
Speaking of the American economy, tomorrow morning, 8:30 Eastern, we will get from the good people at the Bureau of Economic Analysis the number for third quarter gross domestic product, the government's estimate for how much the economy grew in July, August, and September. We know it is going to be big, a record-breaking number by a lot, because for part of Q3, billions of dollars were flowing into the economy through relief checks and extra unemployment benefits and the Paycheck Protection Program and all the rest of the CARES Act. There was a big rebound in jobs numbers, though that rebound has slowed. There was a rebound in retail spending data, even though tens of millions of people were then and still are collecting unemployment assistance. But there is something we want you to keep in mind, and it's important for when you hear that GDP number tomorrow.
It's that whole annualized thing.
That was me back in June, reminding you that quarterly GDP gets reported on an annualized basis.
I'm going to say it again, annualized.
A refresher, perhaps?
Annualizing means taking something that happens over a short period of time and extrapolating it out over an entire year. You make $1,000 a week, for instance, that weekly wage annualized is $52,000.
So we have been obviously over that whole annualized thing before, but we are going to give it another quick pass today because it matters. So here we go. Say the economy grows 1% over 1 quarter. To annualize that, as the government does, you assume the economy is going to grow 1% the next quarter, and then 1% the quarter after that, and then 1% again the quarter after that. That is 1% quarterly growth annualized at 4%. All right, actually, it's a hair more than 4% because of the magic of compounding, but we'll spare you the math. Here is the thing you need to understand, though. After that terrible, terrible, terrible second quarter, the Atlanta Fed is predicting that in the third quarter, the economy grew 37% annualized, which is, yes, an eye-popping number. But it doesn't mean the economy grew 37% just in the third quarter. 37% annualized is about 8.2% quarterly. So when you hear there was 30 or 37 or whatever percent growth in the third quarter, as you surely will tomorrow, that is not nothing, but it's not the whole thing either. And as we started with virus cases climbing and the easy part of the recovery behind us and no relief bill in sight, even if the third quarter is the fastest growing on record, which you will hear tomorrow, it should not be exactly music to your ears, if you'll pardon the pun. Speaking of music, well, it's going to be the wah-wahs when we get there. Before we dig into this next story, it is worth noting, for the record, I guess, because it's not like any of us could forget, but we are less than a week out from the end of voting in this election, which means that everything that happens on Capitol Hill includes political calculations of the highest order. And so we turn to the CEOs of Facebook and Google and Twitter, spending a couple of hours this morning enjoying a bipartisan, though virtual grilling by members of the Senate Commerce Committee over what they are allowing those companies, or not allowing, on their platforms. The Republican beef is that the social media giants censor conservative content, questionable reports about Joe Biden's son most recently. Democrats are concerned about misinformation as well, especially coronavirus. They want more of that removed. Marketplace's Scott Tong reports that the root of this whole thing is the law that underpins a lot of what happens online. It's known as Section 230, and both parties want to change it.
Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act gives social media platforms a lot of leeway to police content. As long as companies work in good faith to remove inappropriate stuff, the law protects them from liability. Still, there's plenty of anger over what's online on both sides of the aisle. Daphne Keller at Stanford's Cyber Policy Center thinks Congress will likely change the law, though how is anyone's guess. Here's how she describes the anger on the right.
Tech platforms are silencing people with conservative political views more than they're silencing everyone else. That's a claim that doesn't have a ton of evidence, but on the other hand, nobody has the data to answer these questions one way or the other.
Liberals want more content moderation of misinformation, says researcher Paul Gallant at the investment bank Cowen. For instance,
the deepfake video of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that made it appear as though she was inebriated. Google, YouTube took that video down. Facebook left it up.
Gallant thinks anything Congress passes will likely be challenged in court by tech companies, saying it violates the First Amendment. Still, Silicon Valley is nervous. Section 230 protects sites like Yelp, Reddit, basically any site with a comment section. Bay Area lawyer Kathy Gellis warns against reducing any of those protections.
There's a real concern if Congress starts messing with Section 230, what the effect will be on the innovation economy, both for the smaller companies here who may not be able to sustainably stay in business, and what it will do to any future startups.
She says many lawmakers know they could hurt the industry, but with voters complaining about the internet, how can they say no? In Washington, I'm Scott Tong for Marketplace.
If you're up early tomorrow morning, or even if you decide to sleep in, you ought to listen to the Marketplace Morning Report, everything you need to know to start your economic day. There was a memorandum from the White House last night. Subject line read, Presidential Determination on Refugee Admissions for Fiscal Year 2021. 15,000 total is the number. Just for comparison, the total in the last full year of the Obama administration was 110,000. That reduction has had a real impact on a lot of local economies, including in Erie, Pennsylvania. Population loss there and manufacturing declines have forced city officials to count on the refugee workforce. We went to Erie back in 2017 for some stories about how that city and its economy might change under what was, at the time, a new administration. Delana Graysinger is one of the people we talked to. She's the director of the International Institute of Erie. It's an organization that does refugee resettlement. Delana, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I went back and I listened to the interview that you and I did in September of 2018. And the last question we talked about was what refugee resettlement means for Erie and that area economically. And I have to imagine now that with refugee counts down and the pandemic on top of that, it has an economic effect.
It does. So when we last chatted, we have a small business program that really focuses on, stimulating the local economy with refugee-owned businesses. And, we're gaining momentum with that. This administration has definitely been a challenge to immigration and to refugee resettlements, which impacts the local economy and families, and lower numbers of arrivals coming in has really changed how we do business under that program, and definitely how the local economy looks. It's still part of the city's strategic approach to grow the city. And, we're really hoping that something will change and allow refugees to be part of that for sure.
Do you have a sense, do you know the numbers off the top of your head about numbers of people coming to Erie in, say, late Obama years versus, late first-term Trump years?
Yeah, so in Erie, we were upwards of, 500 to 600 individuals coming in a year. And this past year, I can tell you, we had 18 families, 44 individuals.
Wow.
Yeah, so big difference.
Yeah, and that's, not to get brass tacks about it here, but that's a labor force issue, right? Because they will typically take jobs that maybe not everybody in Erie is willing to do, those kinds of things?
Yeah, correct. We've got a really strong relationship with a set of employers in town, and they've been hit by this as well, because that is their labor force, and that is how they've also looked at strategically growing their business. So, they've had to kind of shift models and scramble, and we're good partners with them, but there's only so many folks available. So.
Let me give you then, just as a last question, two options. President Trump gets reelected to a second term, or President Biden has another look at refugee policy. What do each of those futures look like for you and for Erie?
So I think if the current administration stays in place, it's going to continue to be a challenge. We know that the president has thrown around the number of 15,000 individuals coming into the country for the year, which is the lowest it's been, I'm going to throw out there ever. Mm-hmm. And so, that's going to take a real hit on the local economy. And again, it's going to take the whole community coming together to figure that out. I think if we see a change in administration and policy around allowing refugees in, that the Erie economy will thrive. Local employers will be able to have their employee base back, and we'll see more small businesses opening, which is definitely what Erie needs.
Delana Graysinger, she's the director of the International Institute at Erie. They do refugee resettlements. Delana, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Coming up.
And they're essentially posting asking, am I right or not?
I mean, if you have to ask, you know? First, though, let's do the numbers. Yeah, Dow Industrial's down 943 points today, 3.4%, 26,519. The NASDAQ down 426, that is 3 7/10%, 11,004. The S&P 500 fell 119 points, 3.5%, 32,71. Euler told you about Boeing as that company announced plans to cut more jobs, thousands of them. Boeing today trimmed down 4.5%. Scott Tong took a look at Section 230. Put the spotlight on tech companies at that Senate hearing today. Twitter disengaged 5.3%. Facebook ghosted 5.5%. Google's parent company, Alphabet. I still don't understand that rebrand, by the way. Anyway, down 5.5%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by TD Ameritrade. For a trading platform that fits you, Thinkorswim offers customizable screeners, charting, and forecasts. Learn more at tdameritrade.com/Thinkorswim. And by the Renzetta Family Charitable Fund and Next Gen Personal Finance, a nonprofit organization that believes all students benefit from having a financial education before they cross the stage at high school graduation. Online at ngpf.org. And by C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai.
WNYC is supported by Salesforce, providing support in today's changing world. With sales, service, and marketing all in one platform, Salesforce helps small businesses connect with customers in new ways. More at salesforce.com/SMB.
There's a lot going on right now, around the world, around the country, and right here in the New York area. So we're trying something new. WNYC is teaming up with NPR and All Things Considered for a new daily news podcast called Consider This. Catch up on the day's news in a quick 20 minutes to keep you informed about what's happening in our community alongside the most important national stories, so you can make sense of the day. Listen to Consider This from NPR and WNYC weekdays wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC in the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered. Stocks are getting battered and bruised this week because of fears about the coronavirus's impact on the economy. We'll hear more at 7. Stay tuned to WNYC.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Rizdal. The Center for Responsive Politics said today that the total cost of this election, presidential all the way down the ballot, is going to be... Any guesses? It's a lot. It's a lot. $14 billion, a record, of course, and $3 billion more than the group was guessing just a couple of weeks ago. The center says it's seeing an extraordinary influx, it says, those are their words, of political donations and spending. And the fundraising and spending is really unlikely to end on November 3rd because there are all kinds of things that candidates and campaigns can keep spending money on even after all the votes have been cast, including, as Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports, recounting some of those votes.
If a race is really close, most states will double-check the tally just to be sure.
The majority of recounts are what we call close vote margin taxpayer-funded recounts.
Mark Halverson is with Citizens for Election Integrity Minnesota, an election monitoring group that keeps track of recount laws and regulations all over the country.
About 35 states have these provisions when the margin is anywhere between about 0.1% and 0.5%.
Sometimes recounts are run through the same machines that did the first count. Sometimes the recounts are done by hand, the most expensive option.
The cost is virtually 100% labor, the setting up of the recount, hiring people to do we're talking about a manual recount.
Connie McCormick is an election administration consultant who has studied the costs of recounts. She says state governments will often cover those costs if the race is within the legal margin. But if it's outside that threshold,
the candidate or the voter or the political party must pay, and it can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Or more. That's what happened in the last presidential election.
My name is Jill Stein, and I was the 2016 Green Party presidential candidate and also the plaintiff of record in a multi-state recount.
Stein's campaign asked for recounts in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and had to come up with the money to pay for them.
We raised a little over $7 million for the recounts. We spent initially about $6.5 million. The major portion of that was on filing fees to the 3 states and attorney's fees.
Some of the legal fights are still ongoing, but some of the filing fees have been refunded. This year, it's more likely the major parties would step in to foot the bill for recounts, and both Democrats and Republicans say they are prepared with cash and staff in the event they want to challenge tight races. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
You remember Crocs? Huge for a while, then scorned. Now those multicolored soft resin clog things are apparently a thing. Again, the company reported earnings this week did real well, thanks. Shares are up 24% for the year at a time when not all businesses are enjoying life. Marketplace's Erica Barris has more on why Crocs are having a moment.
Crocs went through a rough patch during the Great Recession, but a few years ago, they became popular again. They were also a punchline, like in this 2016 Saturday Night Live skit.
Is wearing Crocs and socks.
Now, during the pandemic, people post their Croc collections online, teens wore them to virtual proms, and then there are celebrities.
I love Crocs.
That's DJ Khaled in an unboxing video.
Look what I just got.
That enthusiasm and Croc collaborations with musicians and brands Vera Bradley and KFC have led to an increase in sales during the pandemic. Daniel McCarthy, a marketing professor at Emory, says the brand's newer popularity is a combination of
some clever influencer marketing that they've done, as well as apparently just being comfortable.
Comfortable matters because so many of us are spending more time at home. But style matters too, says Letitia Brown, a management professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology.
Yes, I'm home, but I want something that's new and different.
The shoes are also popular with people who aren't staying home, those who work in the medical field. Earlier this year, the company donated more than 800,000 shoes to healthcare workers. Sam Poser is an analyst with Susquehanna. He says it was a good marketing move.
It was also very authentic to the way the product was being used.
And right now, Poser says Crocs and other footwear brands that sell comfort are selling. I'm Erica Barris for Marketplace.
As Scott Tong was telling us earlier, the CEOs of Facebook and Google and Twitter spent some virtual time on Capitol Hill today defending how and why stuff gets on their platforms or taken down. They were there in part because the internet can be a dark place that brings out the very worst in human behavior. But there is a corner of it that has become pretty popular where people try to learn from their mistakes and become better people. Tova Danovich wrote about it for The Ringer. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell me about this place on the internet that we can't really name on a family radio show.
Yeah, so Am I the Asshole is what's called a subreddit. It's a small kind of community on the website reddit.com. People essentially go there and they post some kind of interpersonal conflict where someone has told them that they were in the wrong in this given situation. And they're essentially posting asking, am I right or not?
So let us be clear, that will be the only bleeping in this interview. Here and after, I suppose, we will call it AITA, just to save ourselves a lot of bleeping. It is not about advice. It's about judgment. Yes?
A little bit of both, interestingly. It did kind of start off a little bit more on the judgment side in 2013 when Mark Bolak first created this community. He had a very simple question and wanted to know, was he right or was he wrong related to should the air conditioner be set high or low in the office? A very common conundrum that has come up over the last few years. And it's just kind of ballooned since then. So one of the things that the site does is it will actually list a judgment 24 hours after a post goes up based on the majority of responses. So it does have those final judgments listed on each post. However, most people go into a little bit more detail with their comment. They will say, YTA, you are the, because of XYZ reasons. So a lot of people that do post these questions are actually reading more for the advice and for people kind of extrapolating on their situations.
So look, just for the record, the thermostat in the office ought to be set lower. Don't at me on that one. But if you go now to this subreddit, there's something like 2.3 million subscribers, right? Which is just a lot of people looking for advice on, as you say, moral judgment issues that are coming at us blindingly fast here in 2020.
Yeah, that's correct. There are all these conundrums that we don't know what to do about, both in terms of how to behave around COVID, you know, the political situations going on, certainly Black Lives Matter. All of these are really big moral questions that have kind of giant answers that we are either unwilling to come up with or are impossible to answer at this current juncture. So AITA is a place where you have these small conflicts in comparison, and they're very relatable to our everyday lives. So it's something that anyone can go in and have an opinion on, and sometimes see the people respond to those opinions and actually change. And it's so cathartic to see that in 2020.
Fair enough. Tova Danovich writing in The Ringer about AITA. We'll just leave it right there on Reddit. Tova, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
This final note on the way out today, need to get back to Scott Tong's story about those hearings about social media and Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, so that you can hear this question posed by Senator Ted Cruz to Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. Here you go.
Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear?
Senator Cruz went to Harvard Law School, so he probably knows this. But the reason this thing is so hard is that Jack Dorsey didn't get elected to anything. Neither did Mark Zuckerberg or Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the guys who founded Google. They're not the government. They're private citizens who founded what turned out to be incredibly powerful companies in this economy, and Congress can't figure out what to do with them.
Marketplace is supported by TIAA, who knows clients' passion will never run out, nor will TIAA's commitment not only to get clients to retirement, but through it. More at TIAA.org/neverrunout. And by Constant Contact, with email marketing, websites, online stores, and other resources. Committed to helping small businesses and nonprofits stay connected and do more business online. More at ConstantContact.com.
All right, we're going, but here's your midweek moment of economic context, super quick because we're a little bit tight. You know who else is worried about the global economy aside from stock traders? Oil traders. That's who. The U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate fell more than 6% today. Our media production team includes Robin Edgar, Drew Jostad, Jeff Peters, Daniel Ramirez, Jay Siebold, Charlton Thorpe, Ben Tolliday, and Becca Weinman. They're coming into the studios, so the rest of us don't have to unless our home internet is terrible, as I've been saying. I'm Kai Ryssdal. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.